just so I can make sure people can jump on if they want to. So just in case you didn't want to say anything. So we do have 2 minutes before we start. Your mics aren't on anyway, so do my little spiel. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's see how you look.
It's a narrow frame.
Yeah. You want to get as close as you can without breaking your fingers. Okay, but you can lean into. You can see it right where you're going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just start it this way, and then once I get into the questions, I'll roll right over. All right, 1 minute. Facebook is going to be on in 3 seconds. There will be sound for that, just to let people jump on. Thirty seconds. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 63 of Beach Talk Radio. This is Saturday, June 29th, 2019. My name is Ed Ryan. Kim is on vacation out west. She will be calling into the show later in the hour. We are live from Beach Time Out in Times Square on Fort Myers Beach. And, of course, we want to say hello to everyone listening on the Florida Podcast Network. In addition to coming to you with video on Facebook Live and YouTube, you can also listen to the show on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, beachtalkradio.com, or we encourage you to download the free Beach Talk Radio app from the Apple App Store. Anyone watching live on Facebook, please do let us know where you're watching from. And you can also type in some questions for our guests today once we get rolling. So let's get right to the content. First, some background. On May 21st, 2018, after years, that's right, years of working together with the developer, the Fort Myers Town Council unanimously approved the Margaritaville Resort. Shortly after the approval, Lonnie Kai owner Bob Conadieris started running full-page ads denouncing the project, trying to rally local residents to his side. For over a year, he's continued on that path, even paying his employees to stand in Times Square with petitions against the project, claiming it would put mom and pops out of business and increase traffic. In addition to his negative campaign, Conadieris backed 2 lawsuits against the town, claiming they didn't follow proper procedures when they approved the project. Despite years of collaboration between the town politicians and the developer, Conadieris' deep pockets are part of the lawsuits filed by local resident Chris Patton. On August the 8th, it will be 1 year since the 2 lawsuits were filed, delaying the project really until who knows when. The fact is, Conadieris' campaign to get residents on his side has largely failed. As in any community, you're going to have people that do not want change, and that's just okay. People have a local government they can go to, and as they did in the early stages of the project, and voice their concerns. And they did that, and it was modified along the way. Unfortunately, that part of Estero Boulevard still looks awful, thanks to a hurricane about a decade ago. Conadieris is now the only person standing in the way of this project. Progress on the island and the beautification of Estero Boulevard. The truth is, he really isn't participating in any discussion or debate about this. He's doing everything he can to delay the project in the courts, which is all he can really do. It's a total sham that the court system has allowed this to go on. The petitions he's asking you all to sign are meaningless. He's telling lies about the developer and the project, and his attempt to prevent a new business from starting is going to damage all the good that everyone has been saying that he does on the project. So where are we now? Let me introduce our guests for the first 45 minutes of the show. TPI developer Tom Torgerson and John Gucciardo. Thank you guys both for coming on. Tom?
Thanks for having us, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. How do you want to start, Tom?
Oh,
man, you're the guy with the questions.
So the first question I have is, why don't we go back to the beginning? Where did this all start? Where did the project start?
Okay, little history. You want to do the history, Gooch? You're good with that.
TPI Hospitality and Tom Torgerson personally started looking at the island as a place for a potential investment many years ago. Tom can probably talk a little more about his personal involvement, visiting the beach, visiting the island over a number of years. He actually bought his home and lives on the island now, which is a significant fact that a lot of people seem to want to overlook. But the truth is, about almost 5 years ago, the town council authorized an ad hoc committee to get together and put together some ideas about what would be the best in terms of redevelopment potential for the Helmut Plaza area, the Crescent Beach area. Tom listened in, participated, took notes on what came out of that, and tried to develop a plan that mimicked, to the best extent possible, the recommendations that came out of that ad hoc committee. So really what you have is the town council starting the process about redevelopment possibilities, and Tom Torgerson and then TPI coming in and trying to bring that to reality. There was what I'd like to refer to as a false start. There was a project that was brought out for public scrutiny, which frankly probably missed what the community expectations were all about. But Tom did the right thing again. Rather than holding firm and digging in his heels, he reevaluated his situation. That was around 2016. At that point, I was lucky enough to be able to join the TPI team. And Tom directed us to spend almost a full 2 years then outreaching to the community. We talked to everybody that would talk to us about what the community expectations would be for that area in terms of redevelopment. We talked to the local businesses. We talked to full-time residents, part-time residents, our seasonal folks, tourists, the other hotels and resorts on the island. And actually, we extended our hand out to Mr. Conandaris at that point. I personally tried to reach Mr. Conandaris for about 2 years to participate in that process. He did not take advantage of that, unfortunately. But everyone else pretty much did. We even put together focus groups that were consisting of folks who had been the most vocal opponents of the first version of what might be built there. The bottom line is that after that 2-year period, we felt comfortable that we had a product that we could bring forward to the actual approval process. So we went to the LPA. We were able to bring together a project that got a 5-2 approval at the LPA, and that started the kickoff for the actual public hearings in front of the town council. I'll let Tom talk a little bit more about what that experience was like, but the bottom line is that through that 2 years of outreach and then the entire formal approval process, there was constant negotiation, constant consensus building. The ultimate end product was something that received a unanimous approval from the town council. And I still remember the tears and the hugs and the joy that was expressed in that room, because we actually brought together something that I would say about 80 to 85% of the community not only supported, but was enthusiastic about seeing come out of the ground. Unfortunately, we've been held in that position ever since.
Tom, one of the things I wanted to ask you was the Conadieris and whoever's filing the lawsuit, they seem to be hung up on calling you an out-of-town developer. Can you address that?
Well, part of the history is that I've been on and off Fort Myers Beach since 1991. I rack stored a boat starting in 91 at Fishtail Marina. This is my permanent residency. We rented here for years. We lived on a boat for years. Now we have our permanent residency here. We live here about 10 and a half months of the year. We still have a home on a lake up in Minnesota, have family and friends and the area surrounding us there that I grew up. And so we go back and visit there a little bit, a couple weeks here and there throughout the year. But I live I live right across from the Lanakai, right by the project, and a stone's throw from where we're sitting here today. We love Fort Myers Beach. We're very immersed into the community, my wife, Mary, and I. This is I can't imagine us ever living anywhere else other than on our boat, cruising around, catching some fish once in a while. The project really began towards the end of 2014. And at that time in TPI's history, I was still the owner. Actually, it was myself and my ex-wife were the owners. And we sold the company at the end of 2014. It was the beginning of 2015 that TPI then, which I am no longer owner, have any invested interest in, started picking up this property. And it was by the end of 2015 that we closed on the final purchase. It seems like even the purchase of the property is a difficult thing for people and reporters to track, but it's about $36.4 million of property acquisitions that we accumulated. There's been lesser tallies of that number thrown around, but it's 36.4 million. And Gooch filled in really kind of the history post that. We did have the false start. We thought we were doing the right thing. We learned quickly that it wasn't, though it had support, it wasn't majority support, and it just didn't feel right. And we never did get to the point of a formal submission on what was called the Grand Resorts project. Ironically, Mr. Conadaris has paid people here that were trying to secure petitions or signatures on a petition, people from, who knows, what country or what state or what town, but anybody that would sign a petition. He was representing pictures of the original project, which was 564 guest rooms, significantly a different scale of project than the one that was approved by the town council unanimously.
What I don't understand is, maybe you guys can clear this up for me, is you went through all these years of modifying the project, bringing it down, working with the town, meeting with the businesses. You even had a committee of people that were so opposed to it to meet with them. I remember talking to one of them, having one of them on the show, yet somehow this winds up in the court after a government council approves it. Maybe I'm too dumb to understand how you can go to a court. If a government approves it, then they approve it. You shouldn't be able to hold something up like they're able to hold it up just because you have deep pockets to do it. Explain that to me.
Let me speak to that a little bit. You're right. It is hard to get your head around the fact that after this entire process, which includes not only the community outreach, but then formal public hearings, it is hard to kind of grasp the fact that then the court system could be called in as kind of the final arbiter. I used to practice law. I don't anymore. I fully understand the right of people to petition the courts for what they call redress, to fix an issue that they think exists. However, in this case, what you really have is one individual, and again, I don't think I'm saying anything that's not already been substantiated by Mr. Conadaris himself, that he is the funding behind the lawsuits that exist now. But you have this one individual who's really trying to substitute his judgment for the judgment of not only the community, but of the elected officials of the community. I don't want to say that people don't have the right to petition the courts. Of course they do. But you would think that, at least in this kind of a case, there should be at least some kind of accountability on their part if they're proved and when they're proved to be wrong. I don't know if we'll ever pursue that or not, but it is something that at least I would like to see as part of a long-term strategy in terms of what do you do after the lawsuits are settled. Let me also say this. I understand that Mr. Conadaris has certain emotional ties to the beach. I've known he and the family for 30 plus years. But unfortunately, as I said, I don't think it's right, nor do I think it's appropriate for one individual to try to interject what his vision of the town is above that of everybody else. Mr. Conadaris not only, I think, is trying to do that, but the really sad thing, at least from my perspective, is that he doesn't understand what the project is. We can get into that a little bit more, but let me just say in short that I had an opportunity to finally talk with him personally only about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I walked away with a very distinct understanding that he doesn't understand what was approved by the town. that's unfortunate.
You're talking about the density. There's a lot of mentioning of the density, the monstrosity, and the letter that he attached to the ABC news story. Is that what you're talking about? He doesn't understand that part of it?
In part, yes, but it goes even deeper than that. Two things right off the bat in terms of not only the letter that he just posted, but some of the ads that he's been running in the local newspapers talks about an $80 million gift that somehow TPI Hospitality got from the town. Another thing that he keeps pointing at in terms of actual numbers is a 300% increase in density. Both of those things are factually not true. And you don't have to take my word for it. I would suggest that anybody who still has an open mind about this or has some questions, take a look at the public record. I mean, again, these things were vetted not only in the focus groups and the community outreach, but were vetted in public hearings. They're all on tape via the town hall. You can listen to it. It's about 4 days worth of hearings and testimony. But it's very clear that there was never any gift of anything, much less $80 million, nor was there an increase in density of 300%. Our numbers actually show that if you compare what TPI Hospitality could have built by right, that is without asking for anything, and what they were finally given, it's probably about a 25% increase. And even that increase in density is still well within the bounds of the comprehensive plan.
And maybe if I could just add that, we're regurgitating history, and that's what I guess Bob Conadaris is trying to get us all to do. And he's being pretty effective because Gooch and I are sitting here today. So we're regurgitating the last 4.5 years of hard work that this community and our people have done, and the town's consultants, giving a lot of credit to a couple of people at the town for the actual approval that was finally given to us. It wasn't just a zoning approval. First of all, Bill Spilkowski, independent, very respected municipal planner in the state of Florida. He just contains his practice to Florida because Florida is so unique in a lot of regards to land use. But he was the author of the town's comprehensive plan when it was created, and the town had the foresight to hire Bill Spilkowski as a third-party consultant to them to guide the process of reviewing our plan in front of the LPA and the town council. Now, Bill, we initially if you go back to the town records, our application initially wasn't using the multiplier approach to density. Our property obviously isn't virgin land. It's been developed, and with it, there's inherent rights on it. Bob Conadaris, just to begin with, says we only have 84 units by right. That's BS. The Pierview Hotel alone is permitted for 70 units. That's 70 on that little piece of property. Then there's cottages, 12 cottages right next to it that are single family home zoning. And that equates out to another 36 units. Just right there on 2 postage stamp pieces of property, there's 106 density units of hotel units just on those 2 pieces. There's 78 through a CPD that was previously approved on Helmrich Plaza, which was just on a piece of it. So what Gooch was saying is that on a build back approach, it added up to about 200 hotel units of density that we really had by right. And the town's approval of 254 units, that was the additional units that they did approve. We requested 290, I think.
Originally?
We requested 290. In their reviewing of the case, they decided 254 was justified with all the many, many public benefits that we were given to the property. But Bill chose to convert our application from a build-back approach to density rights to the multiplier. And his reasoning was that, hey, guys, you know what? People don't understand build-back. It's complicated. It can be calculated a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Let's not put something out there that can possibly be challenged. And he said the multiplier approach cannot be challenged. Now, he said, what you're asking for, your density is less than the Lanakai. It's less than the pink shell. It's less than the Edison House. It's less than the Best Western Hotel. It's less than the Diamond Head. It's less than the Harbor House. Our density is less than all of those properties. The other person I'd like to give credit to for a rock solid approach to our approval, it wasn't just a zoning approval. And Roger Hernstead, the town manager, said, hey, wait a minute. This was back in about November of, what year was that? 15?
15.
15.
Right?
Thank you, Gooch. Around November of 15, he said,
It's been a long road.
you know, let's convert this from a zoning approval to something that's hard and fast, and let's make this an ordinance. Let's take this down the ordinance path, which is significantly different than a zoning approval. The town of Fort Myers Beach actually, through all these 4 hearings, and the end result is they actually passed an ordinance approving this project, which is really going to be pretty hard to turn over in courts.
And that's not something most people would have to go through, an ordinance.
No, absolutely not. But it was smart. It was
Try and solidify it more, to make it more solid, which didn't work.
There are some crazy people in this community. As much as we love it, I think we all agree there are some crazies out there. And these people, in their infinite wisdom, were trying to protect the town against challenges such as...
But you could also say that's unfair
Conadaris.
to make you have to do that when you're not making everybody else do that.
Well, they were actually protecting us, though. They were actually protecting us. And really going forward, anybody else should probably go through the same process that we did. Really, I would recommend it.
And I agree with what Tom's saying. It was a longer process and a more difficult process than most people would have experienced. But in the final analysis, it was the right thing to do. And it's consistent with what Tom and TPI's approach has been through the entire thing. They could have just independently come up with a model, a concept of what they wanted to go forward with, but they took the harder path, which was to go out and talk to the community again for over 2 years to see if a consensus can be drawn. So while it might be more difficult, the end product, I think, reflects that it's a better product.
I think the true motivation of Bob Conadaris really showed itself when, after all these years of Gooch trying to get him to sit down and meet with me, I finally, in my exasperation, about 12 days ago, I think everybody knows I walk the beach. I do that to kind of more for the mental revitalization than the physical, maybe both, but keep the belly down a little bit. But on one of my walks, it was on a Wednesday, I just said, you know what, I'm going to go into the Lanakai, and I'm going to go up to the office, and I'm going to ask if Mr. Conadaris is in. And I did that. I was actually quite nervous to do it. And they said, well, who are you? I said, I'm a resident. I live right down the block. My name is Tom Torgerson. That's honestly what I said. I didn't say I was associated with Margaritaville. I agree. I didn't do that. I just said I was Tom Torgerson. I'm a resident down the street. And he said, let me see. And they came back out and said, Mr. Conadaris, I'll meet you. I sat in the lobby for 5-10 minutes, and Bob comes out, and I stand up and walk over to the office and shake his hand and introduce myself. And I could tell that he really didn't know who I was, and that
You got to be kidding.
he was thinking, I think, that I was a hotel guest and maybe I had a complaint to register. And I said, Bob, I don't know if you understand, I'm Tom Torgerson, associated with the Margaritaville project. Then you could just see him wake up to, oh, now I know who you are. And he said, Tom, I just want you to know, I just don't want change on this island. And it's nothing personal, and I just don't want change. And I said, Bob, why don't we sit down and have a cup of coffee? Let's just chat about this. We're here together for the first time. Let's sit down and talk about it. He says, nope. Turned around and walked back into the office.
Well, that's way different than the letter that you that I read in its entirety at 8 o'clock. He said that he told a completely different story from that, in that you could have said something to him then, but you didn't. Then you kind of just walked away. So who knows who wrote the letter? Or it's just strange that two grown men can't sit down and at least have a conversation about something. You don't have to agree on everything, but it just seems a little weird to me that he didn't even know who your name was, which makes me think he didn't even write the letter.
Well, then after my doing that, I don't know if it's 2 weeks ago now or just short of that, but that's when I put together the olive branch letter that the Beach Observer published as a letter to the editor. And it was true. It was honest. And I'm just, it's like a last resort. How else am I going to really sit down with this guy? Is there any chance of resolving this? And his reaction was what you saw.
Right. Everybody's freaking out online because they've never seen so many people watching or listening to the show. They're all freaking out and want me to make sure that I remind everybody it's Tom Torgerson and John Gucciardo from TPI, and we're talking about the Margaritaville project. And John, I wanted to ask you, this lawsuit seems to be taking longer than anybody thought it would. I mean, what's going on with the judge? Can we at least get some kind of ruling on one of them? Is he on vacation or something?
Well, you're right about the fact that it's taking longer than we had anticipated, but that is the nature of the legal process. In a nutshell, let me describe it this way. There are two different lawsuits that are pending out there. One we describe as the more objective one. It's called a writ of certiorari. It's basically asking a judge whether or not, again, objectively, whether or not the town council followed the right procedures in making their decision. The second one is the civil action, which is more subjective about whether or not the decisions that the council made were the right ones. The first one, the writ of certiorari, we really do expect a decision from the judge any day now. Of course, we've been saying that for months. The paperwork has all been filed. Both sides have completed their submissions. It's really just a matter of the judge compiling that and rendering decision. And again, we hope to have that behind us relatively soon. The civil action, unfortunately, there was a changeover from the first judge that it was assigned to another judge. So that took a little bit of a delay that we hadn't anticipated. We're now going through what's called the discovery process, which means depositions and talking to the experts and taking down testimony. And it's on the trial calendar for this November. Obviously, we want to see if we can fast track that as much as we can. We also understand, though, that the opposition, Mr. Conadaris and his team, and Chris Patton and the team, it's in their best interest to drag it out as long as possible. Again, from their perspective, any delay is a win, and we are fighting that battle also. But, you can only control so much when it comes to the legal process. We are fully prepared to vet this in front of the courts whenever we get that opportunity, and we hope that when it is vetted and we get a favorable decision, that'll be the end to it, and we'll be ready to come out of the ground.
What prevents somebody else from filing another lawsuit right after this to try and bankrupt him?
Yeah, the time period for filing a suit has run.
Okay.
So this should be the last of the legal obstacles. Of course, there's always surprises in this life. We don't expect to see that happen. And we do fully expect that the issues will be resolved in our favor. And short of an appeal of those decisions, we'll be ready to come out of the ground.
And I think maybe to tail onto that or add on to that, a question that I get asked often is, well, actually I get thanked regularly for hanging in there, but I just want the public to know that we are not going anywhere. We have the tenacity, the commitment, the wherewithal, the horsepower. We're going to follow through on this. This resort will be built. This resort will be developed. This is all about a delay. This is not, if Bob Conadaris was trying to have us, drive us to going broke or running away, if that was his goal, I can guarantee the public that is not going to be achieved. Now, if his goal was simply to delay us, I'm going to say that he's achieved his goal. But that's the extent of what this can be. This is not going to kill the project.
Is it costing you a lot of money in legal fees?
Yes, it is. Well, it's actually the costs are, the bigger costs are not the legal fees.
Delays.
It's the delay costs, and they're in the 8-digit numbers. It's huge to TPI. We're an employee-owned company. People think that, Tom, this is all about you, and it's actually zero about me. I have no ownership in the company anymore. I have fiduciary obligation to help lead the company on a 5-year contract, which is up at the end of this year. But I own zero interest in TPI. It's 100% employee owned. It's the largest hospitality company in the country that's 100% employee owned. When I sold the company to the employees back in the end of 2014, they were flush with cash. They have a very strong balance sheet. They're set up for a bright future. We're opening new hotels routinely. We have 2 Marriott products that'll open this fall. We have a Hilton product that'll open next winter. All these are under construction. We just went under contract last week to purchase 2 Marriott products up in Minneapolis. And we've got the off-island project here that's not held up in any kind of court battle that we're going full speed on. We're well into our zoning process there, our development order. And as soon as we have that in place, we're going to go ahead. Less than a year from now, we'll be under construction with that off-island hotel, which will have resort amenities. We're going to build the off-island shuttle parking operation right out of the gate. Our parking for just totally dedicated to Margaritaville. Just so if Mr. Bob Conaderis has his ears on, totals about 450 parking stalls. So yes, we do have parking.
So one of the questions from our regular viewers, Bill, is can residents or voters help by sending letters or do anything? Is there anything you want locals to do to help?
I have an idea.
Uh-oh.
Well, really what this is, Mr. Conaderis is hurting the town and hurting the will of the community. The town wants this. The community wants this. The town council wants this. The LPA wants this. The residents want this. The business owners want this. The property owners want this. The visitors want this. It's a very, very small minority that don't want this. And I'll call it I won't call it anything, but it's very few people. And Mr. Conaderis is disrupting our town, and he's been disrupting our town unassociated with the Margaritaville project. And I think it's about time the town does something about it. Mr. Conaderis sets his own rules, and he's not held to any standard. And we all know that when people think of Fort Myers Beach, they think of the Lanakai, and they think of stabbings. They think of robberies. They think of muggings. They think of rapes. They think of, pimping, and they think of fatal accidents, and they think of gangs, and they think of gang fights. And what they also think of is that I don't want to live there. And this town has a desire to build a charter school. Who the heck wants their family to live here with the reputation of the Lanakai? This town would like its property values to at least be somewhat comparable to those immediately south on Barrier Island to us, immediately north on the Barrier Island to us. We're at about a 40% discount to those property values. Why? Because of the Lanakai. Because we are not regulating and holding that property to be responsible with its liquor license. And the town council, I'm making a plea to our town council, to our town administration, to review the Lanakai's liquor license. I'm absolutely making a plea. You have the power. We have hired our people. We have reviewed your legal rights, and you have the rights to impose standards on the liquor licenses that you permit each year. Yes, it's a state liquor license, but the municipality has the final ruling on permitting each year. And you can set standards. I could tell you that our work and our background work has determined that on an average per year, and it's been consistent for the last number of years, that the Lanakai's public service calls, which is Lee County Sheriff and FMB Fire District Emergency Medical Services, exceeds 500 per year consistently, year after year after year. Other resorts, you look at their records and their calls, and they're half a dozen, maybe up to 8 a year, compared to over 500 consistently for the Lanakai. What is the financial cost for each one of those over 500 public service calls to the taxpayer? But greater yet, what about the reputation? That's the real cost. You ask me about what our costs are. The legal costs aren't the big ones. It's the delay costs. Well, the cost of this town, of the town council and our town administrative staff continuing to let the Lanakai operate in a non-responsible fashion with their liquor license is such, I couldn't even begin to tally what the property values alone, what they are doing to diminish the values on Estero Island. So unassociated with our lawsuit, in another way, the Lanakai is hurting all of us in this community. And I really make a plea to our town council and our town administrative leadership to take this on and not hold the Lanakai to a different standard than anybody else. Hold Margaritaville to the exact same standard. Hold everybody to this standard. But they should not be able to play by their own rules.
Is that something a town council can do, or is that a state? Is that
Town
a
council
license?
can do it.
They can. So I don't know where to go from there. So that was so how come it became so personal between between Conadieris and you? I mean, what is the problem? I mean, he's not being a good neighbor.
Competition. Bob doesn't want the competition, and we're not going to be competition. You know, he can't quite understand the difference in demographics of our guests versus his guests. We will not have spring breakers. Our people are going to be paying over $600 a night for the hotel room. He's really a bar with beds. I mean, it's an entirely different clientele. We are not going to touch his business. In fact, the lifting of the tide is going to lift all boats. His business will improve. But he doesn't get it. He thinks that we're going to run him out of business. And it's that kind of change that he doesn't want. Let's say the truth, Bob.
As you can tell, this is a very personal thing for Tom, and it should be. I think Mr. Conadieris has kind of set the tone for the personal nature of whatever dispute that we're in the middle of right now. And I don't want to speak for Mr. Conadieris. He's perfectly able to do that for himself, but I can maybe give you a little bit of context about how it got to this point. And that is to say that, again, my wife and I have lived on the beach here for 35 plus years, and I've known the Conadieris family for almost that long. I get it that Mr. Conadieris' vision of this town is probably different than most people. I had an opportunity finally to sit across the table from him a couple of weeks ago and talk about the Margaritaville project. And as I indicated before, it was clear to me that he really didn't understand what the project was. But one of the recurring themes that he kept bringing back was that he wanted things to be the way his late wife remembered them being. And I kind of understand that. I have a certain amount of sympathy for his position. But what he's done with that position is totally off the rails. I honestly believe that while Mr. Conadieris is emotionally involved with the situation here on the beach, that he is perhaps being influenced by other people to play on that emotion, and that's what led to the formal lawsuits. I think Mr. Conadieris, I think you can see this in the written statements he's putting out, sees himself now as kind of the savior of the beach, the only one who's able to restore what he sees as the true vision of the beach. Unfortunately, right now it runs contrary to what the community has asked for, what the community consensus is, what the elected officials have indicated, what the local businesses have indicated. So he's kind of out there on his own. And again, I don't want to try to defend his position because, frankly, I don't think it's defendable. But to put it in context, I think it's a combination of his emotional ties, plus the fact that he's being influenced by people to use his resources to fight something that fortunately the rest of the community wants to see happen.
So on several occasions, we've heard that he's a puppet to some other people, but nobody's mentioned any names. And he threw Anita Saracita under the bus with that letter, and she told me never to defend her again. She can do it herself. So I'm not going to do that. But who are you guys accusing of being the ones holding the strings?
It doesn't really matter. Bob's his own person, and the Conadieris family are their own people, and they're the ones that need to rise up and not be abused. And it's actually, what do you call that? Age abuse. I mean, he literally, they are abusing Mr. Conadieris.
Well, yeah, I have heard it described by some people as elder abuse.
So is that?
Thank you.
I don't know if it rises to that, but I can see that argument.
Well, the fact that he didn't know who you were kind of lends into that argument that
or
if
the
he
fact
doesn't know
that
your
he
name,
didn't know we had parking. He thought we had zero parking. And the fact that Gooch had to explain to him when he did meet him a few days ago or a couple weeks ago that we have an overpass. He didn't even know we had an overpass. I mean, how much does he know this project? He doesn't.
And to show you how perhaps out of touch he is with the realities, once we did, I actually had to draw out a little map for him and show him where the pedestrian overpass was. But his reaction to that was that, well, we put it in the wrong place.
Right.
I mean, we can only put it in a place
Lee County
where
Department of Transportation is wrong. Florida Department of Transportation is wrong. All the traffic planners that the town hired and consultants that were hired, they're all wrong. But Mr. Conadieris is smarter than us all, and that pedestrian bridge is in the wrong place.
So let's assume that the project is going to be built at some point. When will you have a shovel in the ground if things go according to plan on this side of the bridge? What's your best guess when the gold shovels will be out and Anita will have the last laugh because she'll hold the one shovel in front? Yeah, I'm not going to hold you to that.
Reluctant to answer it, but we're not expecting Mr. Conadaris to give up easily, and he's actually said clearly that, and he's gone on record publicly to this, that he'll spend his last dime fighting this project. So I guess assuming, so many untruths come out of his mouth and out of his written hand, but assuming that we take this particular one at face value, we won't be in the ground till a year from now.
All right. So a year from now is the earliest?
That's kind of taking us all the way through appeals.
Okay. So after
that's so many appeals, and it takes us through the appeal process.
After the appeals, could that be the end?
That is the end.
How many appeals are there in the process?
Just one.
One appeal.
One per case. But one per case.
Okay, so
enough.
Let me ask you this. Is there any way for us all to call the judge and say, get off your ass? And come on. I mean, if it's on his desk, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem to be any argument that makes any sense to keep this thing delayed.
Ed, I appreciate that question, Ed, and I appreciate what I hope is the reaction from a lot of your listeners that they'd like to be able to influence the court proceedings in some way. But the truth is the court proceedings kind of have a life of their own. There isn't a whole lot of outside influence that can be exerted by anyone on that. And again, while it's frustrating that it's taken this long, it will run its course. We do fully expect that it'll be favorable to our position, and it'll be in our past at some point.
My plea to the town council and to the town administrative staff to enact standards to enforce responsible liquor service is not a reaction to Margaritaville, but it's a continuation of Bob's abuse of this community. That's what's driving that, and I want that to be made very clear. Now, Chris Patton is protected by what's called the state statute SLAPP law. Since Mr. Conadaris is not actually the petitioner, he's not protected.
What do you mean? Explain what you mean by SLAPP law.
We cannot in any way approach Chris Patton or talk with Chris Patton or try to negotiate with Chris Patton. The state statute prevents us from doing so.
Okay, so being that she's the one that filed the suit, you can't talk to Conadaris.
Yeah, she's just a pawn. She's just the front person that Conadaris and his attorneys went over and asked if she would be the front pawn on this deal. But nonetheless, she's the petitioner, and Bob Conadaris and the Atlantic Eye are not.
And let me add one other thing, just so that there's no misunderstanding. I actually had this question posed to me by one of the local TV media folks. This isn't about negotiation at this point. The olive branch that Tom, I think, in very good faith put out there to sit and talk with Mr. Conadaris is not about renegotiating what the Margaritaville project is going to be at this point. That question has been asked and answered by the town council and by the community. The ability to sit and talk with him, if he were open to that, is about explaining what exactly it is. Because again, as Tom has pointed out a few times, and I think I did also, I firmly believe that Mr. Conadaris still at this point doesn't even understand what was approved.
You know what? I'll throw this out there, Gooch, that just to kind of get out of the box as to would we negotiate? I'll throw this crazy thought out there. If Bob Conadaris wants to fund $3.5 million into escrow for the pedestrian bridge, the two stairways, and the two elevators and the public restrooms, if he wants to fund $3.5 million into escrow to pay for those public benefits and public improvements owned by the public, and also we would assign our maintenance agreement, he would have the obligation to maintain all those facilities in perpetuity. Now, if he wants to do that, we would go back to the county and get permission to put a plaque on each side of that bridge and make that bridge in honor of Grace Conadaris. If he wants to do that, we will go to the effort and the work to get that as a memorial to Grace Conadaris.
And is that something that came out of the letter where he said he would build the bridge himself, or is that
no? That's
okay?
That's just to get out of the box.
Okay.
I mean, we would negotiate something like that.
Better take the microphone away from him before he gives away something else.
That was my thought entirely.
Well, I would be saving us $3.5 million. I'm not giving anything
Oh.
away.
So again, back to the building of the project. Let's say it finally starts a year from now or whenever. Talk about some of the stuff that we'll be able to enjoy if we're all still alive when this thing is finally built. Because how long will it take when it starts? It's another couple of years, right? 2 years to build. So we're talking 3 years from now. It'll make me 75. I might be retired in a Margaritaville home up by Orlando. I won't need to go over there. But what are some of the things that people will be able to enjoy? I know we've seen the drawings, but it's better to hear it from the builder.
I think there's 2 large-scale features that is going to blow people's minds. One is the beachside facility, which is really an outdoor rec area. It's muchly designed for more adult use, though there's an end of the pool area that's more dedicated towards children. We're not exclusive adults, but it's live entertainment in the pool. It's a massive, just flowing pool and landscape grounds with bars and restaurants, and just open to the beach, open to Estero Boulevard, and a very significant beachside land shark bar and grill. And I think that all this is open to the public. The town allowed for us to sell 325 public entrances into the beach club per day. I think people are going to be absolutely blown away that when people on the island, residents and property owners have family come visit, that they're going to want to make a very special day with their families that are visiting and buy some tickets into that center. Now, the other one is what we call the terrace, and it's the elevated area over the parking, and it's right aligned across from Crescent Beach Park. It all looks directly over the Gulf of Mexico and Crescent Beach Park. And there, too, bar, restaurants, and flowing area, great photo ops, the Coconut Telegraph coffee shop, and just great vistas, a corner dedicated to weddings and social events. Off of that terrace is a 5,000 square foot ballroom that opens up to the terrace. I think those are the 2 features that the community will use the most.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine watching the boat races from up there.
Nice.
I'd invite everyone to take a look at the Facebook page or the website if they haven't already, and just take a look at the renderings that we have, the most current ones that give you a feel for how this is going to operate and how it's going to look. And I, as Tom said, I think people are just going to be blown away by it.
Is this something that you designed with the help of the folks that put out the other Margaritavilles, or did you come up with the ideas yourself?
Actually, that brings up a whole new topic. The answer is no. We designed it ourselves. The theming, Margaritaville is incredibly immersed into the theming, but the physical layout and the physical structure was our design, because we didn't get Margaritaville involved until after the town approval. And we were ridiculed. Why did we hide? Why did we not disclose that we were affiliated with Margaritaville? The reason is, 1, that we weren't, and 2, that with Grand Resorts, we did disclose and did enter into franchise license agreements with Hilton, Marriott, and Intercontinental Hotels. And when we pulled the plug on that project, we ended up paying $1.2 million in liquidated damages to get out of all of our agreements and pay off our consultants. We didn't want to repeat that again. So we did not enter into any agreement with anybody until after the May 22nd, 2018 Town Council unanimous approval. After that, and actually, though we had talks with Margaritaville and others prior to that, they too didn't want to enter into an agreement. They knew of our history with the Grand Resorts. They didn't want to be associated with something that possibly didn't get approved. So we did not mislead anybody. They're another untruth. I hate to call them lies, but lies out there. We did not have an agreement with Margaritaville until about a month after our approval with the town, and we and the Margaritaville people, their public relations, worked together immediately to make it public.
And ultimately, when you look at the pictures, the renderings of what the resort is going to look like and how it's going to operate, you can see that this is clearly a reflection of what this town's expectations were, not some cookie cutter project that might have been approved by Margarita Corporate somewhere else. This is really the town of Fort Myers Beach that you're going to see.
Something that really has ticked off the residents a lot has been the road work down on the other end. And, you can't avoid what they're doing. It's a small area. They're trying to rebuild the road. Years from now, it's going to be great. There's 50 different projects going on. And the only reason I mention that is you guys are going to be building something right on the other end of the bridge. How are you going to figure out how to build that while season's going on? It's going to take 2 years. You're going to have so much other stuff going on. How are you going to be sure that people aren't going to get ticked off at you because you're going to be right in the middle of the mess there?
We vetted out contractors long ago and ended up selecting DeAngelis Diamond, who is local Southwest Florida here. But we did entertain a half a dozen other qualified contractors, and we vetted them out over about 6 months. And we chose to commit to DeAngelis Diamond heavily because of their reputation. You watch their large-scale projects, which a couple of them in Lee County. One that finished was off of Gladiolus, just off of Summerlin, the multi-tiered senior living facility. What is it called there, Gooch? But the white buildings. If you recall it, right off on the north side of Gladiolus there, massive project, $120 million project. You watch, you reel back all the times you drove by that road and look at how clean that job site was, how organized that job site was, how they did not intrude on the public street, how anytime a truck that tracked anything close to anything onto the street was cleaned up, they had people out there immediately. They had traffic control at all times out there, whether they needed it or not. They ran that project methodically. They got one that's over 500 unit residential development right now in Lee County off of Colonial and 6 Mile Cypress that'd be the east side of that road right there. You go check out how that job is run. It's unbelievable. So we selected them, and then they've been involved in our entire process of finishing our construction plans and our design plans and working with the town on all the development orders and the permitting. So they are a part of the team, and they know that they have to contain themselves to this site. They know the challenges, and they're willing to take them on, and I trust them. And this is going to be viewed by the town as one of the most impressive construction projects I've ever seen.
Any other things you want to get across? It's almost been an hour, and I know we can go on and on for much longer, but John, anything you want to add?
Actually, there is one other thing I'd like to touch on. I've already mentioned that my wife and I have been residents here for about 35 years. One of the, as Tom likes to say, we don't like to call them lies, but one of the untruths or falsehoods that we keep seeing repeated, sometimes in the media, but specifically by Mr. Conadaris and his ads, is this idea of an $80 million gift. And we touched on this a little bit before, but let me try to clarify that a little bit. And I asked Mr. Conadaris about this specifically when I had that chance to sit down and talk with him a couple of weeks ago. I have to say I walked away not being any more clear on where he got that number from. So I'm not going to talk to the number. I'll let him try to explain that. But in general, let me just say this. Mr. Conadaris is trying to give the impression that somehow the town council gave away some significant amount of money. We'll call it $80 million because that's the number he puts on it. As a resident, as a taxpayer here, if that were true, I would be very upset. But I can assure anybody who's listening that it is so far from the truth that it's almost hard to react to. You don't have to take my word for it. Again, listen to the hearings. They're all public. They're all recorded. It's all transcribed. If you watch the give and take, the flow of the consensus building, it's clear to anybody that looks at it objectively that if there were any kind of gifts, and I don't like to call them gifts because I think that it's part of a good faith negotiation, but if there were any gifts, they flowed not from the town to TPI, but the other way. The best and clearest example I can give of that is what Tom touched on a little bit before about the Gulfside Beach venue. One of the things we heard over and over again when we talked to the community was that they didn't want a canyon effect. They didn't want to come over the bridge and make that bend around Estero Boulevard and see massing of buildings on both sides of Estero Boulevard so that you felt like you were driving through a canyon. I get it. I wouldn't be happy with that either. However, most people that are in the development business or in the building business would tell you, and it's pretty obvious to most people, that the Gulf side property is where the value is. Most hoteliers, I think, would have been very reluctant, if not, impossible to convince them to give up those rights on the Gulf side and build on the north side of Estero Boulevard at Helmuth Plaza. But that's exactly what Tom and TPI did. I don't have to put it in dollars and cents terms, but just in common sense terms that I think most people can relate to. If you owned a condominium on the Gulf side of Estero Boulevard and looking out over the Gulf with those views, and had the very same exact footprint of a condominium on the Back Bay side without a Back Bay view, that is a landlocked condominium on the other side of Estero Boulevard, what do you think the difference in values would be? Would it be significant? I think that's pretty clear that it would be. And that's what TPI gave up to meet the consensus and the expectations of the community. All those building rights are not only gone temporarily while this project is there, but in perpetuity. Those rights are given up now, so that land is much less valuable than it might have been considered before. And that was something that they did voluntarily. Obviously, it was not mandated by anything. They could have built there, but they gave that up. So, again, that's, to me, the most clear example of which way the concessions were going during this whole process. But don't take my word for it. Either read the ordinance, which enumerates those things, or listen to the hearings, and you'll see where the real flow of gifts, if there are gifts, were going.
Right. There was other things that you gave back to the town
There's a
that
whole
were
laundry
not
list.
mentioned in
A
that
whole
long
laundry
letter.
list, right.
And we don't need to go over again. We did go over that the last time.
But that's probably the most clear example I can think of.
If I could just do a quick closing, Ed, kind of dovetailing off of what Gooch said, is that so under this wacky math where Bob Conadaris and only Bob Conadaris can figure out if he can't communicate how he comes up with this $80 million number, but somehow he does, and nobody else can figure out what he's talking about. But under this Bob Conadaris wacky math, and it is a fact that the Lanakai has greater density than the Margaritaville Resort, as does all these other resorts that I enumerated on the north end of the island here. What kind of gift did he get? And what's the value he places on that? And so he built at a higher density than Margaritaville. So it's really kind of hypocritical, I think, that he should get in the way, or feels like he wants to get in the way, or is absolutely in the way of Margaritaville going ahead at the will of the people, at the vast majority of the will of the people, the unanimous double votes of town council. It's just so much support behind it, and he gets in the way of it, and he selfishly got more density than the Margaritaville Resort. I don't get it.
So there, I know I asked earlier about calling the judge. I was kind of joking, but if there is anything the residents can do, I know there have been a couple of questions both here in the live studio audience, which, by the way, John Lalo is huge right now, and people that are watching on Facebook. What is there that they can do? Just kind of.
I really think my plea, Bob Conadaris, aside from this lawsuit and holding the town and the community hostage, has been doing it for years, abusing the town and the community. He's holding back our property values. He's holding back our ability for families to want to live here and have children here, and the ability for us to get a charter school. The reputation of the Lanakai is holding back this island, totally unassociated with our lawsuits. And I think it's time for the public to tell the town council that they want to have the town council enforce responsible alcohol service on this island.
And so to do that, what, you want them to go to the town council meeting, write a letter to the mayor, or whatever?
All of that above, that usual show of support that the community wants the Lanakai to function responsibly, and everybody else be held to the same standard. Again, Margaritaville, everybody be held to the standard that the town council sets. So if upon, heaven forbid, they came up with a standard that says 500 public service calls a year is acceptable. If they come up with something less than that, and Atlantic continues to operate, it does, and exceeds that 500, there's suspensions of liquor license. Maybe they lose their Sandy Beach environmental critical right to serve alcohol. Maybe they get their license revoked. I don't know. But there needs to be a tiered approach to this, that warnings, and finally the club comes down if they really don't take heed to it. But I just have a hard time understanding why the general public wouldn't want the Lanikai to act responsibly on our island.
And I know, for those of you that don't know, I sent a public request to the sheriff's office about 3 weeks ago to ask how many sheriff's calls there were at the Lanikai, and I got a spreadsheet back that had over 600 of them. And I called to see if that was like over the lifetime of the hotel or like 2 lifetimes of the hotel, and it was in the last 12 months, they had over 600 calls. Not all of them are violent calls, but that's 600 calls that are made for one establishment on the island, and that's crazy. It's
and
just
that compares to other establishments that have 3 or 4 calls, and that doesn't count the Fort Myers Fire District Emergency Medical Service calls. Those are on top of that.
Well, John and Tom, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys coming on. I hope to do it again closer to when the shovels are in the ground. Thanks for bringing the big audience to John, and let him know that we deserve a raise here for the show, and appreciate you spending some time with us the full hour.
Maybe one last thing. There's a rumor going around that somehow we are paying you.
Who, you guys?
To represent us. Have we ever paid you
not a penny? And I'm bummed about that. I'm willing to take money, but no. I mean, no, not at all.
I knew that was coming.
Maybe we should clear up that untruth.
I don't know why anybody would say that. I'm allowed to voice my opinion for things I love and things I hate, which makes it nice when you're not being paid, because if your hotel sucks when it's built, I'm going to tell people it sucks.
There are some people who have a conspiratorial frame of mind. I'm glad we got that resolved.
Oh, no way. I wouldn't lie about that, because, I mean, if I was getting paid a lot of money, I wouldn't have to come out here every Saturday and put up with John Lalo shit. All right, guys.
Thank you, Ed.
Enjoy your breakfast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And don't forget the 4th of July. Oh, look at that. She just tried to call, and we just missed her. So maybe she'll call back again. I know Mike's waiting to come on to talk about his thing. But before everybody buzzes out and we see the numbers go down, I want to let you all know about FMB Designs and Remodeling, folks. You really need to get on their Facebook page and get on their website, check out what they're doing. They've been a great sponsor. Now, they are paying us. They're a sponsor for the show, and we appreciate what they're doing. FMB Designs, Nikki is going to be a guest host while Kim's out on vacation, and I think she's here trying to call. We're going to try something a little wacky. Have a seat. Grab one of the microphones, and we're going to see if we can you hear us? Wife, can you hear us? All right, let's see. Yeah. Let me see if I can get Mike to help out here. Hold that close to the camera, Mike. That camera's up on top there. I don't know if everybody can see. Yeah, there you go. No, you got to show everybody on TV her face. There you go. Now, let me see. Dear, how's the vacation going?
It's going super fantastic. I was just now putting on my sunscreen because I'm getting ready to head out.
And your stream to see sunscreen, you mean, right?
Yes, stream to see. See, can you see it?
No, nobody can see it, but we're glad you're here. I'm telling you, we had a killer show today. I don't know if you were able to watch it, but John and Tom broke the internet with so many viewers today. It was crazy.
Oh, I was watching it. He was all fired up.
All right, so real quick, before we let you go, tell us about how you got lost in the Grand Canyon.
Oh, there's so many stories. But yes, I was so excited to get there. I parked real quick in an enormous parking lot, of which there were 3, ran to the canyon, got my pictures of sunset. It promptly got dark, and I was lost for an hour finding the car and had to render assistance from the park rangers.
Okay. You're okay, though, right?
I'm okay. That's the least of the things that have been going on. It's been super fantastic.
Okay. Any bears or any animals that you had to be scared about?
No, there's huge elk that roam all around the park. So one of them was eating grass right behind my tent, but they don't bother you unless it's mating season. Okay.
And so where are you off to now? Utah?
I'm in Utah right now. I'm at the Cowboy Bunk House, which is a super fantastic place. If you're out this way, stop by. And I'm heading to do some more hiking and to the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, which is a huge sanctuary that takes in all sorts of animals, cats and dogs, goats, everything. And so I'm going to go check the sanctuary out.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, dear. We'll see you in a couple of weeks in Nashville with Jilly.
All right.
All right. Stay out of trouble.
Everybody.
Bye-bye. All right, Mike, thank you so much. I'm so glad you sat down here and helped out with that. And I know we want talk about what you have going on.
Yeah, tonight is actually one of our, I call it the soft opening or a dress rehearsal of our haunted pub crawl. It's a weekly historical tour. Actually, every tour, we donate $1 to the Historic Society here on the beach. So every ticket sold goes to them. And basically trying to, preserve our history. And sounds like we got a lot of history brewing right now. But, that's the kind of things, all this growth is basically why I have a tour. Because, way back there was just Calusa Indians here. And then things just kept progressing. And now we have our awesome beach out here right now.
Sorry if I'm zoning out a little bit. I'm still a little bit frazzled by the conversation a little while ago. And I'm trying to wrap my arms around what happened today. But that was, what'd you say was going on? You have something going on tonight?
Yes,
for
I do.
$1 somewhere.
Well, no. Wow, you're really not listening at all to me, are you? No, actually, like I said, tonight is I call it the dress rehearsal. We're getting a bunch of people together. They're going on our first historical haunted pub crawl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a magical history tour. Basically, I tell about the history of the beach, history of each location, tell a little spooky story, do some magic at the end, and then we move on to the next place and have another drink.
All right. So
it's a lot of fun. It's a weekly tour.
Where do you meet tonight?
Tonight we're meeting at Shamrock,
Okay.
Shamrock Irish Pub, and then we'll be working our way all the way back down here to Times Square and hitting some of these places and some of the more haunted crawls, the haunts on the beach here. And got some T-shirts and all sorts of great stuff.
So meet you at the Shamrock tonight at 1:00.
No. This is actually a VIP invite only tonight. Our first tour is July 5th, 6th, and 8th. The weekend after the July 4th is when you can sign up. Go to our website, fmbhauntedpubcrawl.com, to sign up for your tour. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're just going to basically learn a lot of stuff. I'll entertain you with some magic, and then we'll have some drinks. And that's
awesome.
basically it. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming back on. We appreciate it. And good luck with the crawl.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We want to thank you all for listening and for being part of the show today. And, of course, I'll be taking snippets of the show and posting them on Facebook and sending them out so you can listen to them on iHeartRadio and on all the apps that we're on. We're on iHeart. We're on Spotify. We're on Spreaker. We have our own app. But I'll be snipping up a bunch of those videos that Tom was talking about earlier on in the show and sending them out so that you can spread them around. And thanks for everything. Thanks to FMB Designs and Remodeling for sponsoring us. Stream to See. If you go and get some sunscreen and some of the products on streamtosee.com, you are going to put in the coupon code BTR. BTR is the coupon code, and you get 10% off. So you want to have your sunscreen during these hot summer days on the beach. Another great day on the beach, another great show. Episode number 63 in the can. Next week, 64. Nikki's going to be sitting in as a guest host. And then the following week will be Dan and Megan, the newlyweds who got married down in Key West, will be sitting in as guest host for Kim. And then we'll be back after that, whatever the Saturday is after that, July the 20th, for episode number 66. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend. And don't forget the 4th of July, the bridge will be closed for a few hours. You want to make sure you plan around that and then come on down to the beach for the 4th of July parade. Thank you all and bye-bye.